So good morning, everyone. And again, it's again nice to see all of you again Sunday morning. And so yeah, again, we'll start with the motivation as usual. So again, try to make yourself relax, comfortable as much as possible. And try to quiet and calm your mind as much as possible. Then we can generate good intention by thinking and contemplating. May our coming here together with good thoughts and listening to the talk, reflecting on them. May all of these become cause and conditions to actualize and develop our spiritual path, realizations. May it become cause and condition to actualize highest level of compassion, wisdom, and may it become cause and condition to attain fully awakened stage, so we can be most help and benefit to every sentient beings, each and every sentient beings. Okay. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listen to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodang sogi zonam la, chanchu padu dan. Dagi shuje gibe sonam ge, dola penje sangye doba. Sangye chodang sogi zonam, chanchu padu dan. Dagi shuje gibe dola penje sangye doba. So we have been going through the stages of path. And last week we discussed about the importance of having awareness and realization of the nature of impermanent in general, and especially the nature of death impermanent, because that is something, whether we like it or not, something we have to deal with, something we will have to face it in some time. And so it's better to be aware and so that we can start prepare ourselves so that we can prepare mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So then when we actually face the reality, that we are more prepared on all these different levels. And so it becomes less painful to ourselves and less painful to people that are left behind and those who are around us. And also that we have prepared for the next journey after the death. So we kind of discuss about that. So then, and today I'm going to discuss what happens after the death. So because we talk about the need to prepare spiritually and practice the Dharma, because that is something, our spiritual practice, our Dharma practice is something that can help and benefit not only during while we're alive, but at the time of death and afterwards, after that. And of course, it is a kind of big subject, but again, as I mentioned, I will be just kind of touching a little bit. So what happens after the death, is there anything continues after the death, or is that it, So I think that subject has been very subject of interest throughout many centuries, many thousands of years. And it is a topic that has been discussed a lot. And continue to be discussed, and continue to be discussed. So I think in generally speaking, we can say maybe there are four different thoughts or belief what happens after the death. There are some, who believe after the death, in many of spiritual or religious path, after the death, either you go to hell permanently and you stay there permanently, or either you go to the heaven and you stay there permanently. And then there's some materialistic view that says nothing happens, nothing continue after the death. Once you're dead, that is it. Nothing continues after the death. That is more kind of materialistic kind of view. And then there's other view, Buddhist and some of the Hindu, ancient Indian school of thought, some of them, then there is a view that after the death, our consciousness continue, and then we take a new rebirth, whether you call it reincarnation or rebirth, So, and the rebirth continues. So there is something that continues. So I think there is generally, I think there is kind of four different view on that. Of course, today we are going to talk from the Buddhist point of view, okay, where the view that the life continues, the life continues, and we continue to take new birth, new reincarnations, and until we end the very cause of such reincarnation, rebirth, ordinary rebirth, ordinary reincarnations, until we cut the very root of that ignorance. But of course, even when you have cut the ignorance, and even when you are free from ordinary rebirth and ordinary incarnation, and even when you are fully enlightened, of course, then you have choice, and you can always reincarnate it. But that is with a choice and out of compassion. So it's not an ordinary rebirth. But here we are talking more from the kind of more ordinary rebirth that we are going to kind of discuss. So, it's sometimes it feels like a little bit kind of abstract, that one, concept of rebirth. Sometimes we might feel a little bit like abstract for some people. For some people, it's not abstract, it's real, because they have their direct experience, because they remember clearly. So for them, it's very personal, it's very real. But for many of us who doesn't have those kind of experience, we don't remember clearly, and so it might feel like a little bit kind of abstract. Neither we don't have the strong practice meditation. Certain highly realized meditators, with a very highly developed concentrations, actually they can see their lives through their meditations. It's like kind of rewinding your movie, or song. So you can go back and back and back. So in their meditation, in that deep concentration meditation, they can actually rewind, they can see their lives. So, but of course, those can only be developed, have those who have a much more higher level of practice meditations, concentrations, so we don't have those spiritual tools, highly developed tool, neither we have direct experience of remembering them, then it becomes a little bit kind of, little bit unreal, abstract for us. And it is subject sometimes we feel, some people feel difficult to connect with. And, that is also fine, we all connect with some subjects, some topic, and we might not connect with some things. That could change, might not change with the times. Sometimes it could change as we study more. Sometimes that change because we have some experience. Sometimes that change because we have new realizations, new understandings, new kind of, enlightened state of minds. And sometimes, we don't have any of them, and then sometimes it might not change, and we still feel some kind of difficulty in connecting with that particular subjects. But that is also fine, Even you cannot connect with that, still doesn't mean you cannot practice the Dharma. Doesn't mean you cannot practice the Dharma, Still you can practice the Bodhicitta, you can still practice compassion, you can still practice being kind, you can still practice developing wisdom and many others. So, but definitely if we have better understanding, awareness, and connection with that topic, then definitely that help our practice to become much more profound. In many areas, our practice to become more and more profound, more deeper, when we have that understanding. It helps us to have more stronger refuge, deeper, stronger, profound refuge. It helps us to develop more stronger and profound sense of connection with each and every sentient beings. And thereby it helps us to develop sense of true love, compassion, and bodhicitta profoundly, and many other practices. So definitely, So in the ancient time, in India, where there is, a lot of different school of thoughts, so many different school of thought, and so many different spiritual paths. They used to have a lot of discussions, not fighting, not trying to fight, kill each other, but open discussions, debate, open discussions. And through that, each school developed more and more higher their path, and definitely one of the subject of discussion at that is, reincarnations, Some Hindu systems, school of Hindu system, Buddhist, as I mentioned, they accept reincarnation. And then there were other schools as well who rejected that system, and who have similar view of, some of people now, the materialist view that when death happens, then everything stops. It doesn't follow. So there has been a lot of debate discussions, and those debate discussions, have been written, 7, 8 centuries, or even earlier than that, So you can see that this is a topic that has got a lot of attentions and a lot of thinkings, thought. It's not just kind of someone just believe, but it is something that comes through a lot of thinking, a lot of investigating, analyzing through centuries. So according to some of the points you find in the Buddhist scriptures about why there is a reincarnations or rebirth and continuity of the life, life after life, is, one of these is, mind, understanding the nature of the mind. If we really understand the nature of the mind experientially, if someone understands the nature of a mind experientially, then they understand the nature of the mind is so different from physical materialistic matter.
What was I thinking?
So physical, so you understand because of your own experience of that, then you understand, the nature of the mind is totally very different from the materialistic, the physical matters, no matter how subtle those matters are, very different. And because of that, and being a kind of non-matter, formless, and then you can see how it can continue. So for example, one of the kind of the logic and reasoning that they come is why the mind continue one after another is, first, the mind is conditional phenomena. That means it's a impermanent condition by its previous cause and conditions. And that we see with our present mind. My present mind is very much affected by my previous mind. It's very conditioned to my previous state of mind. Is that the case with yourself? Or maybe not. I don't know. In my mind, definitely my present state of mind is very much affected by few minutes of my state of mind. And that has been affected by the previous mind. And so there you all goes, So why it is affected previous mind? There is a condition, there is a connection between the previous mind, previous moment of mind and my present moment of mind. There's a connections. And it's a continuity of that mind, so it affects in that way. And so, so therefore my present mind is very much conditioned by my last year's mind. And that is very much conditioned by, my mind of 1 decade ago. That is very much conditioned by my mind, when I was adult, teenager, when I was young, so there is that. And so you go with the first moment of your mind in this life. Where does that mind come from? Because that mind is also conditioned phenomena. It has to be conditioned by something. It has to come from certain cause and conditions. And not only it need to come from cause and conditions, it have to come from similar cause and conditions. It doesn't just be any cause and condition, but it has to be similar cause and conditions. If that being the case, the first moment of the mind during the conceptions, it can't come from, our parent, sperm and eggs. Because that sperm and eggs is a physical matter. It is a physical matter. Is a form, physical matter. Whereas consciousness, the mind, is non-physical, non-matter. So something that is matter, physical, cannot produce something which is non-physical, non-matter. The cause and condition and the result doesn't become similar. Even though it can, the sperm and eggs and whatever DNA, genes, whatever it might be carrying in that, even though it can have some effect, but that is not a substantial primary cause. That will be more cooperative, supportive cause, but not substantial cause. The substantial cause has to be similar. And so therefore it has to be another mind. And so then it has to be the mind from the past. And so that is kind of one of the reason and logic that there comes. And in order to really understand that logic, then we have to really understand, the nature of mind. If we don't understand the nature of the mind, then it will be more difficult to make sense of that arguments or that logic. So logically, that is one of the things that at least that is explained, And another thing is, children who are born in the same families, brought up in the same environment, they grow up to be total different personality, totally different. They have the same genes, same DNA from the same parents, and they are brought up in the same environment with the same care, and sometimes they end up opposite personality. One becomes so compassionate, caring, one becomes so uncompassionate, uncaring, so selfish. It doesn't, when you put together, it doesn't seem like they grow up in the same environment. It doesn't feel like they came from same family, same parents. Because of so, there must be some factors that make them that so different. Even though they have a same kind of, carry this, coming from the same parent and same environment, same upbringing, but they turn out totally different, and there is some factors that make them so different. And then from Buddhist point of view, it is, because it is their personality is affected by their state of mind, which is affected by the previous mind. Because of the previous mind. Also, some children, they are born to be genius without being trained so well. So, some children from very young, just 2-3 age, they are genius. They come out with this kind of incredible talent, genius in music, some in different things, memorizations, some in many different fields, some in math, and you never know where they got that. You never know where they got that talent, that genius, where they had to come from. So again, that is another kind of reasoning, that because they are genius, because they have trained in the past. They have trained in the past. Because they have trained in the past, and so they still are carrying that imprint. And so from the very young age, they are able to show those, because of those imprint. The moment they are being exposed to that, then they are able to be so expert and so well. Whereas so for the rest of the people, even they train after 30 years, still they are not as good as that child. And that we see that kind of genius, so children like that, so often in many different areas of that, And also, you see children, even in same families, some children from very young, so compassionate. They don't want you to hurt and harm any animals. Even the insect, they cry if you see them doing that. They will try to protect it. And they have been not taught. Without being taught, sometimes they cannot even speak well, but they are there to defend. And then on the other hand, we have children, even they are taught not to hurt, not to harm, not to kill. They can't stop doing that. They just like to play. They just want to, hurt, harm. So that kind of, it's not something they have learned recently in this life. It's not something they have trained and learned from the outside, whether from their parent, from the environment in this life, but something they were carrying. That kind of is carried somewhere. Something they are born with that way, carrying something. So that is an imprint from the past. And so those are, and then, another example they give is, so those are some of the kind of a reasoning logic that you find in some of the Buddhist scriptures, texts. Why there is past and future lives, why there is reincarnations. If there is no reincarnations, if there is no past and future life, then there is a lot of questions that need to be answered. All of those questions that we just kind of went through. But when there's a concept of reincarnations, many lifetimes, and the imprint being carried on that consciousness, then it answers most of those questions. Why that child is born that way, with that kind of talent, or why that child is born with that kind of personality, why that child is born with that kind of, characteristic and all of that. So I don't know whether it makes sense to you or not, but it's something that we need to think about. Something that we need to think about, need to give thought about it. You know, whether that is able to convince you or not, that is something else. It doesn't matter whether it's able to convince you, it is not unable to convince you, but something to think about it. Something to think about it. Something to reflect on, something to contemplate on, something to talk about, something to, do more investigation, analysis. And another, because it's so important. If there is a life after this life, and if we are not prepared for that, we could be in trouble, isn't it? We could be in trouble because we have not prepared ourselves, because we thought there is nothing going to be continued after this life. But some of things we don't know. Even though those reasoning, logic might not convince you, but you cannot say 100% what led. We don't know so many things about this world, this galaxy, what is behind our planet. We don't even know much about our own planet. And definitely we don't know so much about what happens after we die. Because, not knowing and then thinking there is not is very different, So, so anyway, and also to understand the nature of the mind, whether it's physical or non-physical, whether it's matter or not matter, is another issue, because, and definitely Buddhist explanation is not a matter, not a form, not a physical matter. It's a very different phenomena. And that is why even when our body, when we die, even though our bodies doesn't continue, but our mind continue and take new life, that. So as I mentioned, one is through meditations on the nature of the mind, conventional nature of the mind. Through that, some practitioner can have an experience of that, and with that their own direct experience, they understand absolutely is a very different, and from the physical matter, no matter how subtle those physical matter are. And then another interesting that we find phenomena is, there's this kind of phenomena that has been known in Tibet for centuries, more than 1,000 years, and of course also probably in India too, where the masters or practitioners, well known or unknown, but practitioner, when they die, even though clinically they are dead, but where they remain in meditation for days, weeks, and months. So their state of mind at that time does not have connection with our physical. Your brain has your brain is dead, your brain activity is dead, you are no more, your heart is no more beating. So clinically, you are dead. But those practitioners remain in meditations for not just days, weeks, months. Of course, we have been hearing that kind of story for a long time, and you see in many stories. But in recent years, they have been documented, some of them. If you actually kind of search Google, probably you might be able to find one of them, documented in New Zealand. One Lama who passed away, and then he was in that state for 20 days, 21 or 22, I don't remember exactly. And it was documented and by one New Zealand news reporter. And going back and forth, he visited them first when he heard, he went visiting and asked some questions there. Then he go and put some cautions to the doctors and people who are dealing with dead bodies. Is it possible, not possible, all of that, because clinically he was declared dead, but without giving him any kind of, using any kind of, chemical, anything, that his body was fresh, just like a alive beings, It's not just for one day, 20, more than 20 days. And when you pull the skin, it is still like this, like kind of, because he tried, or they tried there. And so it's interesting, because that has been documented. And it's not someone by it's just a TV news reporter or journalist. And of course, he tried to get, from Buddhist point of view and from also others, possibly from medical point of view, all of that. So it is interesting. And that phenomena has been observed recently, many, in South India, one of the previous Gandhi-Tiba, also in South India is very hot, especially around that area, in summer, And for 18 days, his body not decaying, no smell, not decaying, and still fresh like that, But that hasn't been able to, they haven't been able to document in a kind of visual like that. But His Holiness encouraged many of the scientists to go and check up there. And so it seems a lot of Indian medical expertise, doctors, expertise, scientists, they came in, they did a lot of analysis checking, and they are surprised, but they cannot explain why, how he's still in that state, his body is still in that state, So at the moment, they don't have explanations. They just don't know. That is what they say. They need to do more research. They need to do more findings. Unfortunately, there isn't too many practitioners who can do that. And for a long time, So it's hard to do that kind of research very so details because you have those cases, only few cases time to time. And His Holiness says, like he had scientists who came and who had all the equipment because they want to test when someone's dying, put all this equipment and they are trying to test it, and when they come, there's no one who is in that meditation state. When there is someone in meditation state, there is no one to do the test. So then, some came and they put the equipment in the dharamsala and train someone to do how to use them. So in case they do that, but the equipment is dharamsala, and then those practitioners South India, so again, it doesn't work. It has to be in Dharamsala, So anyway, but I don't know, recently there was one teacher in Gyute monastery in close by Dharamsala. So again, I saw, I don't remember how many, but many days. And one of my teachers also, he stayed in that state for 9 days, and one of His Holiness tutor, Gyabjiling Rinpoche, I think 3 weeks, So those are in the recent times, and there are many others. So again, so there is something that continue even when your brain is dead and there's no activities of brain, And so again, maybe that might be another way of understanding from Buddhist point of view, because the consciousness is non-physical, so it doesn't have to rely on the brain itself, Of course, gross consciousness, our sense consciousness, and gross concept, gross thoughts, those are very much related with our brain and brain activities, with our physical matters or physical body. But when it comes to the subtle consciousness, then it doesn't depend on those, and therefore is able to, even when your brain is dead and all of that, still it can function, and still it can continue. And if that's the case, then definitely it can continue after the death as well. And so those are some of the kind of kind of reasoning logics that come behind why consciousness is continues, and thereby there's a life after death. Thereby there is past, future life, reincarnation. So that is the. And another thing is there are so many people in the world who remember their past life so clearly. So clearly. It is not, of course, some people remember, but it could be just hallucination. It could be just confusions. You can say that, oh, he or she is hallucinating. Even though he or she says he or she is remembering, but how can you prove that he is actually really remembering past and futures? Maybe he might be just hallucinating. Maybe he might have just tried, marijuana just a few minutes ago. So his mind is having a high, So he might be feeling that way, But there are so many cases that has been studied methodologically and kind of investigated and prove that what they remember, and they actually do investigation, and they go to those places, what they say, and they find out exactly what they're in, some of them in different countries. I'm going to send one link later. Mary will send the link. I've sent her yesterday. And there is one Dr. Tuskal from Virginia, University in Virginia. He and his predecessor, who have done a lot of research on that, and reading so many books on that. But there is a little bit more than 1 hour talk that he was giving. And it is very interesting. I think so. You should watch that. And so I think Mary will send the link that we don't want to show here because it is, Jim Tucker, Dr. Jim Tucker. So there's a talk. He has been doing research on 20 years as part of University of Virginia in a department of psychologists, and so it is a very interesting, can be helpful, to watch that more than 1 hour, and also I was very interested when I was watching that, because also you will find in Buddhist scripture stories, at one time, I think it was Santa Gome, one of the Buddhist master, Santa Gome, and he and one of the non-Buddhists who rejected the idea of reincarnation, they were having a discussions. He was trying to convince the others that there is reincarnation. The other was trying to convince him there's no reincarnations. And after a lot of discussions, a lot of debate, he couldn't. The Buddhist master couldn't convince the other one logically. He couldn't convince him logically, but he was highly realized practitioner, not just a great scholar, and other was also a great scholar. And so then he wanted to prove him the reincarnation with direct experience. So actually, he put some kind of marks on him with some red color on his forehead. And I think another mark, he passed away, that master, because he was highly realized he has that ability, whenever they want to die, they can die. Whenever they want to come, wherever. And then he came as a baby with same mark and proved that master, even though I couldn't prove you logically or convince you logically, but he convinced him with that directly or experientially in that way. And I was, sometimes you hear, then sometimes, I don't know, I'm not so sure, that was sometimes what I get feeling, even though you see that in stories and a lot of that. But when I was listening to James Tucker, they found many cases like that. Because in Thailand, Burma, in many other countries, there seems to have that kind of, when someone died, they seem to put some mark. So in case the child is born in the families, they recognize that. And then she showed many cases, where children remember the past, and as they investigate from the past families and that, then they says, when they died, they mark with some color, with some other things. And they found those just mark in this new baby or the new rebirth. It's interesting. I was quite fascinated. And interested. So also that there is many cases that as well. So then, I started to think, oh, maybe it's the story about Chanda Gome and trying to convince that through that, having the mark and that. Now I think I have less doubt about that in a way now, in that. So anyway, so I think what I thought is, I will request Mary I sent her one video clips. It's a very short. It's, I think, 14 minutes, I think, about someone who remember of the past, and which has been documented by some of the major news in this country. And last time when I first saw it was by the Fox News. It was around 10-11 minutes, and there was some short that I didn't see in this one, and I couldn't find that one, when I was Googling trying to find it. But I found another one, ABC, and by ABC News, and the interview done by Chris Comey, now who is in CNN. So it was interesting. So anyway, I think maybe we'll watch. It seems to be quite. When I first saw it, that in Fox News part of the story is so strong and compelling. So the other arguments, is that we don't know. Not knowing is one thing, but to say there is no life after that, that is different. And also those who said there's no life after that, they don't have proof to say there's no life after that. It's just that they don't know because they don't have enough scientifically enough evidence. So far, scientifically, they don't have enough evidence. And a lot of time in the past, sometimes there are even scientists who are biased, who just doesn't want to investigate. Instead of being open-minded and trying to investigate whether it's true or not, they don't want to talk about, they don't want to investigate. But there are also other scientists who are more open-minded and who are willing to investigate, analyze. And that has changed a lot of things. For example, in terms of that through meditation, your actual brain can be changed. That was a long time ago. A lot of scientists wouldn't believe that. They wouldn't want to go in that area. They don't want to think about that. But then there's some open-minded scientists, especially in neuroscience, they started doing more and more research. And as they did more and more research for the last 20, 30 years, now they have proved that through meditation and practice, your brain can be changed. Then now, the plasticity of the brain, that new finding concept, that came because they were willing to investigate time, energy, resource. And by doing that now, there is a different understanding of that. Also among scientists, in different fields, there are many now who are actually starting to think, who are starting to do some research on the possibility of something continuing after the death. And there are some findings that I don't have now, but I have seen, that that they did research in many different hospitals, in Europe, in the United States, and many about people who have a near-death experiences and some others. And according to that finding research that I've seen, there seems to indicate, that there is something more than that we know. And because they were describing, there were some who were on operations, when someone was on operation table, and they were all covered with eyes. They cannot see anything. They were blank, and then they describe exactly everything that happened in that, who was saying what to each others, who was passing each of those tools and all of that. And the person is describing that his mind was kind of consciousness of watching there and seeing everything there. And so, it is not just someone just describing something, but actually they're describing exactly what is really happening. So it's not just one case, there are many cases like through that, then they come to a conclusion, even though they cannot come to conclusion to say there is a future life, but there is something more than we understand at the moment. And there is something there seems to be some kind of consciousness, soul, mind, whatever you call it, seems to be different from your body and your brain, and who seems to watch. So anyway, those are the kind of new new research. I think not everyone's interested, but there are some within the science community. There are very few number of those who are interested, do more research on those areas, and they are finding fascinating things that change their belief or their understanding before they did those research. Their mind has, after they did those research over the year, they don't have the same understanding of the subject than before, when what they believed before. So anyway, I think I just wanted to share that. And I definitely encourage you to watch the 1 hour that it gives a lot of information in that, and it's interesting. So yeah, so that is a little bit about the, what happens after the life, and as I mentioned before, according to the Buddhist beliefs, based on some reasoning, logic, based on some experiences, there is a belief there is a reincarnations and rebirth after the death. And again, just as it happens with those families, the two parents, they didn't believe until it becomes so personal with their children. And that happens to a lot of people. We see that even with the COVID, isn't it? A lot of people think it's hoax. It's not true until it happens and stuck them or their families. Then they think it's so real now. A lot of things. It's not about just science and evidence there. Sometimes even the evidence are there. Our mind is not ready to see that. Even though there is science, even though there is evidence, sometimes when our mind is not open, we can't see that. But when it really stuck personal in that way, then that could change, and so that is another thing, and of course, if you have heard, so many lamas, tulgus, remembering their past and all of that, but we don't need to talk about even among the ordinary beings. Within something close to me, is one of my cousins. He passed away when he was young, I think in 30s. And of course, he was just an ordinary man, young man. He passed away when he was around 30. Of course, you don't search for a reincarnation because he's not high lama, And then one day, my auntie went to one gathering of our community. When she went there, then she saw one baby. When the baby saw her, she kept on coming her and trying to hug her and say, "Mommy, mommy." She got confused, and the boy's real mom said, "Oh, mommy is here, mommy is here." And the mommy thought the child got confused, So mommy is not there, mommy is here, she told. And my auntie just felt, oh, so cute. And that is all. She had no other thought in that, So then they just went home. And never any thought occurred to them. They just thought the baby was confused, just a cute, And then again, they had another gathering of community. Our community is very kind of small community, so they have a lot of gatherings, when all the times. And so then another time when there was a gathering, again, my auntie was there, again, the child was there. again, she did, the boy did the same thing, you know, mommy, mommy again. And that time, the boy's mom got a little bit kind of, you know, he has not done to any others, but he did twice to my auntie. Both times he made only twice, and both times he did that. And so also my aunt started thinking, and she explained that, you know, I don't know why she does that to you, because, or he, the boy has never done to others, but she did you to you like the second time, and the second time that you saw. And so my auntie asked, you want to go home? And he said, you know, I'm scared of brother. And my auntie had no idea what he's talking about. So she went home, you know, then she explained to the families, you know, what happens and about that child, and trying to hug her and saying mommy, and last time and this time, and about what the child's mom said, you know, that he has not done to other, but to her like twice, and both times they saw. And then his brother, older brother, remember and said, you know, sometime before he passed away, he beat him physically, you know. So maybe that memory is still in his mind. So, you know, there are some like that he shared that then both accepted as their child. So he has a two parent, you know. Of course, he stay with his present parent, but he will visit the previous parent, and the previous parent will also, you know, treat him like their own child. So I just wanted to share because it is kind of close, something close to within our families. And then they sent him to the monastery, you know, but he was in monastery 10 years, but he didn't stay. He left. But he didn't continue. I think he was in the monastery for maybe 10 years. So I think maybe that is more than all for today's. So any questions or comments from today's kind of subjects, which is might be a little bit hard to digest for some, and might be easy for some, you know. Does anyone else? Yes, please. I saw I think two, three hands raising up. So can you unmute? I think I saw Doris. Okay, first.
Thank you, Geshe-la. I haven't really formed my question. I'm kind of surprised I'm even going to ask. What would you say to someone, or what is the Buddhist view on someone that says they're being haunted by a former family member?
Can you repeat? I didn't hear.
What would be the Buddhist view on someone saying that they're being haunted by one of their family members that's passed away?
I don't know what you want to say, you know. Definitely, in some cases, it might be possible, you know. Some of family members might be spirit wandering off, you know, and so in that way. But in some cases, maybe it might be, you know, paranoid hallucinations. So I'm not the one who is to kind of make distinct. I cannot distinguish. I think whether that is something to do with, you know, chemicals and kind of or other substance, or something that is paranoid and that is kind of and therefore they are kind of hallucinating or seeing real, even though maybe it's not real there, or in some cases, there is possible of their actually being there, spirit wandering. And so that part, again, it is hard for me to know because I don't know enough from the medical point of view, the pertain and the the background of that person's and so forth, that could have affected the person's to see in that way. But also it's absolutely possible that so I think one of the things is you don't have to be so fearful or have any bad feelings or fearful or anything. You just need to practice sending love, compassions to them, practice love, compassion towards whatever that spirit, whatever that is haunting them. And I think through the practice of love and compassion, someone can actually communicate with them, that you don't need to be here anymore again. So, you don't have to be here anymore. You can just continue your wherever you need to go, but you don't have to be around here. You don't need to be around here. You don't need to be kind of, whether maybe they are still there because they are still attached to something, maybe because they are still worried about some things, and so therefore they are trying to come there, trying to help, or something they feel maybe unfinished, something that they feel there is something unfinished that they are trying to come and trying to finish that. So I think trying to develop true love, compassion for them, and then through that, then you can actually, verbally or mentally, you can communicate with them and letting them know everything's fine. You don't have to worry. You don't have to, worry. Everything's taken care. Everything's good. You don't have to be be here all the times, and you can move on, and so everything's fine. And so, communicating that sometimes it can be helpful to do that. And sometimes one can be able to communicate in that way. And if it's something really, there's something happening, then sometimes that would help. Yeah. Yes, I think I saw Sujata. Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe-la. This is really helpful today. I have two questions.
Yes.
The first one also relates to ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is a feeling that there are people who have left their bodies, but their spirit is still lingering, right? This isn't that they've gone to the bardo and been reborn as a hungry ghost or something, right? I think I don't understand what the mechanism is for beings remaining after they've passed away, but before, because it feels very much that it's the same person that is hanging around, wanting to help, feeling like they don't have unfinished business. This doesn't feel like a rebirth. Is there? And I don't know where I can read more, understand more about that. Like, I feel like if you pass away and then at a certain point you go to the bardo and you go take a next birth. So is there a place for this more traditional or the Western way in which we think about ghosts, right? That the person dies, but they don't go on to another incarnation. So that's my first question. And then my second question is about, it's also, both of these are sort of about being raised in the West, or like this Western. So the confidence to more fundamentally believe, like there's certain experiences I had early in my life that literally cannot logically be explained by anything other than past life experience. They're very specific, and they can only come from certain things having happened in past lives. And likewise, with the way in which my son's mind stream entered my body, it is extremely clear logically, like I can say this logically, that these things, like there are certain very specific details that could only be that the logical answer is past lives. And yet I still have some fundamental disbelief. And I don't know if it was being raised in a place, in a culture where everyone was always telling me, if you believe things like that, you're going to go to hell, or, like raised in a very conservative Christian town, and like all of this, there's like something stops me, even though I was raised in a family that completely believed in reincarnation, that I have direct experiences in my own life, both in my life and through my son, that there's no other explanation but past life. And yet something blocks me. And I try to learn about other people's past lives. I still have some sort of block. And I'm wondering if you could give some specific advice about how to get over that, that something is stopping me from believing what seems obvious to me, which is past life. So those are my two questions. Thank you very much, Geshe.
Thank you. The first questions, of course, Pardo can be only 49 days. And sometimes people can feel even after years. So, of course, also in Buddhism, there is a concept of ghost as well, and or spirit, we call spirit. And, just like human beings, spirit are just like ourselves with a lot of delusions. And sometimes, just like ourselves, sometimes they might be harmful, sometimes they can be helpful, and they could have different emotion, different behavior, different action, and different time, and different all of that. And I think there isn't one particular specific realm of spirit itself. But in some, you see, in some scriptures, it seems to indicate the spirits. Some of them belong into animal realms. Some of them belong in the hungry ghost realms, in terms of where they belong. Some of them could belong into a demigod realms, So, so there seems to be all the spirit are not in one specific categories. There could be many different spirit. Spirit would belong to some of those different categories. And, and so spirit, I think, just like Pardo and others, they don't have kind of what you call physical body like us, so they are very kind of light bodies. So it's almost like, and so, and they have certain ability to see things than we see, like Pardo, they can see, and they can actually, sometimes they say they can read they can even read some state of mind of the others to certain degrees, just by so it could be one of those spirits, it could be one of those spirits, and they could take in different form as well. I think they have ability to do that, So maybe sometimes they could take the form of the previous life form, and they can come in that form. So again, those are the possibilities, that because you do see, you can definitely, you do see about the spirit in many of the Buddhist scriptures. And then I've seen in different being some of them in different categories. They don't seem to be fit in same categories of realms, so that part, that is all kind of I can tell, and that's all I know. That is all the information I can, that I know. Probably there are more information as well. And then, the second questions, yeah, I think maybe, if we do more kind of research, especially from the scientific point of view, as I was saying, there are more research that's done, and which are indicating, even though they don't say there is future life, but they say it's coming a little bit closer to that than they used to, And I think those information can help us, because in this modern time, we are so if science says something, then we totally believe it. But if science doesn't say it, we don't believe it. It has almost become like that to some degree, you know. And because science has not proven it to be real so far, so we feel it is not real. And but as I was saying, you know, if you really see, there are a lot of science, especially from the medical point of view, who have done a lot of research and continue to do research, and they are finding, you know, many kind of interesting, opening kind of new informations that seems to support more of being their life after continuity of life than not having a continuity of life. Those new research, even though they cannot prove 100% at this point, but all of new research and findings seems to indicate leading closer to that than actually taking it more distant from that. And for that, for me, it seems that also help to some degree, you know, when I see those new research, new information, new findings from that, you know. And then, you know, I think from meditation from point of view, you know, I think if we have total trust in Buddha, you know, and if we can develop a total kind of trust in Buddha's and Buddha's teachings, then, you know, all the teaching that Buddha gave on the reincarnations and there's a whole sutra of him recollecting his past lives. When he was Bodhisattva, he was this and that, all that. Is he lying? Is he making all this up? You know, and so again, you know, if we trust him, of course there are some teaching that we cannot take literally, and we have to interpret it. But also, these ones, you know, doesn't seem to be interpretive. You know, where he's describing his many previous life and as a bodhisattva and his encounter and his practice and all. And there's whole sutra on that. And if we take then you know, it can't be kind of that. And so again, maybe that, I don't know whether that can help us, you know, through that understanding and practice. And then, you know, of course, to be able to have access through a highly developed concentration. We don't have that tools at the moment. Wish we have that tools, then that will be easy, you know. You just rewind in your meditation and you can see all of them clearly, you know. And for some people, you know, it helps, you know, like not everyone, but like for some people, when they do the hypnosis treatment, some people started to have feeling of their past life, future life, and past life through those treatments, you know. But of course, not everyone who does through hypnosis treatment or therapy, they don't come to that conclusions. But some people, they come because they have a very strong experiences and remembrance and so on them. So it has different effect. It doesn't have same effect for everyone, you know. And so again, so I think there seems to be many kind of different tool to help us to develop more stronger in that directions. So we just have to see and find and see what might help, not help, you know. So I think I don't have more other to share than
Geshe-la, Deidre has one question.
Yes, that will be the last questions. This.
Oh, okay. This isn't really a question, and I was sitting wondering if I should say, but I'm going to say, I was also raised in a very tiny town in the South, very Christian conservative, and basically had never really hardly ever traveled, never did anything. And I had two very specific experiences I was walking in a mall and I smelled some incense at the World Bazaar and I started to cry. I was about 11 and I just started to cry. It was completely bizarre. And I had another similar experience later. It made no sense to me at the time, but it was so odd. And I eventually, and I was, born again Christian in my town. That was the only option. And over time, I did know what reincarnation was, but I couldn't really buy into it. But what I could do is I could have an open mind that it might be, but I didn't know. And, over the years, just having an open mind, it allowed me to think differently. And I will just say one last thing. There's the thing that was really interesting to me in the video or research department is more about particle physics, about string theory and energy and matter. It's extremely scientific. There's an amazing movie, and I beg your pardon if this is not my place, but I'm going to say it. It's called What the Bleep Do We Know? What the Bleep Do We Know? And it's about physics. And then there's a Tibetan Lama in there toward the end. It's a mind-bending movie. So I'm just going to say that if anybody wants to open your mind a little, and there are all these Stanford physicists that they interview, it's extraordinary. So that's all. I just wanted to offer that. I hope it's okay.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing. Definitely, I think, sometimes sharing our stories, sharing our experience, sharing our understandings, sometimes it can be even more powerful, helpful than someone just continue to talk and talk. And so definitely thank you. And then maybe I haven't watched what you you just mentioned. Maybe I will watch too soon. Okay, thank you. Then we do the dedications. May all beings everywhere plagued by the suffering of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtues of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or evil fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depressions. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored, finding repose. May the naked find clothing, hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those who with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvest. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayer bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever disease they are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightening cease to be afraid, those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you.